Well, this enormous hunk of meat in front of me is about 25 pounds. This is a giant shoulder clawed roast. You might not find, you're not going to find it in most supermarkets, and you won't even find it in most Costco's. But if you have a Costco business center that specializes in restaurant meat, you may see one of these. This is the same chuck pot roast that you would find in your supermarket for $5 or $6 a pound. If you're lucky, it'll go on sale for maybe $4 a pound. They used to go on sale for $2 a pound, but I don't see them at that price anymore. The best prices I've seen is, as I said, about $4 a pound. This was a little over $2 a pound for the whole thing. Now, what are you going to do with 25 pounds of angry chuck roast? Well, the good news is you can break this down into a lot of smaller parts and use it for anything that requires a very, very flavorful cut of meat. I'm not sure I would cook these as rare steaks because it'll be a little chewy, although I had those as a kid all the time. But it's fabulous for pot roasts and stews and grinding up for chili and all sorts of other things. But obviously, 25 pounds of meat is a lot, and it's not going to last in the refrigerator long enough for you to get to all of it. So we're going to break it down into a lot of different things. The first thing you want to notice is that while there's a nice cap of fat over the top, Jesus, that's heavy, there really isn't that much marbling if you look into it. There's enough, but there's not a tremendous amount. Now this happens to be select, and you know I've always talked about buying prime or choice, but for a meat that you're probably going to braise or cook slowly or by any other long, slow cooking method, you don't need all that much marbling. What you do need is connective tissue or collagen, which this does have, and it's going to break down and be fantastic in any sort of slow cooked method. There is a way also to slow roast it to just past rare, to medium rare, and it is fantastic done that way as well, and maybe we'll do one of those for you too. But the first thing you want to do is get a good look at it and see that it's actually made up of several different, it's one giant hunk. They've taken the bones out, but it's made up of several different muscles which naturally want to come apart at the seams. But the first thing you can do is this sort of fibrous silver skin kind of thing. This does want to come off because this isn't going to get tender as you cook it. So we're going to take that off. The good news is it's fantastic for stocks. So you can keep this and not throw it away, but you don't want to leave it on the roast while you're cutting it up. So we'll clean off as much of this as we can. And because you're saving those scraps for soup, it's not the biggest crime in the world if a little bit of meat stays attached, especially because you've gotten this at an incredible price. So here's an example where you see the muscles want to sort of articulate into different pieces. So just start working at it with the tip of your knife until you can get under this stuff. And work the tip of your knife under it, and out it comes. There. Now, you can see, if you look at it this way, this is one big muscle. So I'm going to see if I can figure out where this goes and take it off all in one piece. I think this might be what they typically call the chuck eye roast. But this would make a really, really nice pot roast. I want to trim some of this fat off. Okay. So yeah, I think we have a very lovely little pot roast, or frankly, you might even be able to do this on the rotisserie or slow roasted in the oven and come up with a fabulous beef roast for French dips or something like that. But you'd have to cook it fairly rare, but you can do that if you slow roast it. Some sort of fibrous stuff here, which isn't really very good. There you go. So that's a lovely roast, and that's maybe 3 or 4 pounds. So that's a nice weeknight roast. Also, if you grind this, you're going to want to incorporate some of this fat back into your ground meat, because you don't want ground meat that doesn't have any fat in it. It doesn't have any flavor if it doesn't have any fat. Those fat phobes out there, go find another video. Okay. Now, we've got a couple of other muscular groups right here, so let's just go around them. Yeah, this is some tough silver skin, so let's get under this and take it off. Beautiful. Look how nice that is. Wow. That's beautiful under there. Look at that. That's fantastic. I'm hacking it to bits in a little bit, but again, we're not going to waste anything, so don't worry. Okay, that's gorgeous stuff. I want to try to get at that. That's good meat. We're going to save that for something. I don't know what yet. All these scraps you're going to save for ground meat, for a hamburger or tacos or anything else that requires ground meat. And basically this is what your supermarket does when they trim stuff up. Here's a separate little muscle that I'm going to take off. It's actually pretty nice looking. You've got little seams here, I don't know if you can see them. So when you cut this, if you were to make a roast out of it and slice it, you might be picking these pieces apart and cutting out the inner part, but it's going to add a lot to the flavor. You can see there's not a ton of fat in here, but this is another very lovely roast. The rest of this we're going to cut up into stew meat, or we're going to grind for hamburger, is take these odds and ends and just cut them up into nice large chunks. See how beautiful they are on the inside? They're really fantastic. And trim off a little of the stuff that you don't like. That's used for ground meat or for soup. And then you have these fantastic pieces of meat for stew. Try not to cut your hands off while you're doing this, but I suppose somebody needs to work in the emergency room. God knows they know me. In many cases, you can just follow the seams, and it just comes apart, and you have some lovely meat for stew. And the luxury you have when you buy a gigantic roast is you can be picky about what pieces you want to use in the stew and which ones you want to just grind. If you buy it at the market, that horrible stuff that they call stew meat, don't really know what it is or where it came from. This way I know it's pure chuck. So I think we've netted ourselves about 4 to 5 pounds of beautiful, beautiful meat for any kind of beef stew, a beef bourguignon. I've left a little bit of the fat on and a lot of the connective tissue inside. This is going to be spectacular, and it's just the right cut of meat for anything that's cooked low, slow, in a braising environment. Fantastic stuff. The rest, the scraps, we're going to grind up and make the best chili you ever had. Now, when you grind your meat, we'll do a grinding demo, but what I like to do is grind it coarse first and save some of that for chili and freeze it in 2-pound Ziploc bags. And then the rest of it I will double or triple grind on the fine setting for anything where you want the meat to stick together, like hamburger or meatloaf or meatballs or something like that. And I'll also portion that out into 2-pound lumps, freeze them in gallon Ziploc bags, and they freeze just fine. And when you're ready for them, all you got to do is bring them out of the freezer the day before, let them defrost in the fridge, and you're ready to go the next day. So what do you do with 25 pounds of Costco meat? This is what you do. You cut it up into roasts, you cut it up into stew, and you grind up some of it. You'll be amazed at how economical it is.